Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to be bringing back another series that I haven't done an update on for a while, and that is my underrated and underappreciated movies series. So let's get started because I got some great picks to share and recommend for you. Welcome once again. My name is Austin, and this channel is all about helping you to dig deeper and go further to better understand faith and film and everything that's in between. If that sounds exciting to you, make sure you click the subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on any future content. Now, the underrated and underappreciated movies series is one that I haven't done an update on in at least a few months or so. It might even be as far as 6 months ago. But I actually have one entry here that I'm ready to give you 5 more recommendations on, and another one that I'm already working on for a little bit down the road. Starting things off for this entry on the list, we have Speed Racer. Now, Speed Racer is a movie that came out in the mid-2000s and kind of just didn't do very well, which is interesting because I do remember watching it at least a couple of times growing up and enjoying it, but I revisited it sometime within the last year, and it was the first time I had done so since I was a kid. I got it off a friend of mine and just loved it. I was really surprised and impressed, and I was really blown away by the visuals of the movie. I'm not by any means an anime expert, but it really feels like kind of an anime brought to life on screen. And obviously the Speed Racer movie is based off of an anime, I think from the 70s or the 80s. So it's really cool to just kind of see that brought to life on, I was going to say the big screen, but I mean, I have a big TV, but brought to life on the screen in the live action format. So I thoroughly enjoy it. It's got some really great themes revolving around family and the importance of just kind of the unity within a family, which is a big thing for me because I'm a big family guy. And I love those themes as well as just the striving for greatness that we follow along with the main character. He just has these great moments where he just has these opportunities to do something special and great. And it's so cool to see. So visually alone, this movie is just great and something that you should really give another chance. Like I said, it didn't do very well when it first came out, but in revisiting it, it's really cool. I actually revisited it based off of a reaction that I watched on YouTube, and he was blown away by it as a filmmaker that I follow, and he was like, man, this is actually a really good movie. So I was like, I got to go back and rewatch this. So I went back, rewatched it, check it out, and I was like, man, this is definitely an underrated movie that needs more attention. So it's one I definitely wanted to recommend on this video. So if you haven't checked out Speed Racer before, give it a chance, especially if you're into kind of like futuristic technology and anime and stuff like that, or if it's one you don't remember having maybe the highest opinion of, but it's been a long time, give it a revisit. So if you haven't seen it in a while, give it a revisit. If you've never seen it before, check it out. I think it's worth your time. Next, we have The Accountant. Now, The Accountant is a really interesting, cool kind of drama, action, thriller type thing, and it stars Ben Affleck as the main character, and he plays an accountant who does the accounting books for criminals around the world. And he also is kind of on the autism spectrum, so they really kind of play with that in some really interesting ways and how he behaves throughout the film. But at the same time, there's some really good action. It's a really good performance from Ben Affleck as we're kind of following along with the police that are after the criminals and him to try and figure out how involved he is in all this, while we kind of see his reaction to it all, his plans that he has along the way to kind of stay out of trouble and out of the fray. So it's really interesting, and you get some really great, especially in the final act, action sequences with some cool characters from actors you don't expect to be in the movie. And this is a really cool one in that it's actually finally getting a sequel as far as I've heard for this movie. So it's going to be really cool to kind of see Ben Affleck come back to this character because it's a movie I really enjoy. I don't hear a ton of people talk about it, so that's why I wanted to include it on this kind of underrated list, and it's one that I definitely recommend you give a shot. Next is actually a fairly recent film. I believe this is from either 2020 or 2021, and it's called The Courier. Now, I don't remember if this is a Prime original or if I just watched it on Prime, but it's a movie that stars Benedict Cumberbatch, and it tells the story back in the Cold War of a businessman played by Benedict Cumberbatch, and he's asked by the US government to actually be a spy and work with a defector from, I believe, Russia. I might be wrong on that. It's been a little while since I've seen the movie, but it tells a really interesting story that kind of follows along with those events that take place within them trying to get information back and forth to each other. But it also tells a really interesting kind of story about their friendship and actually becoming friends through this process. And the movie takes place over the years that they worked together, kind of getting information back and forth to each other for the U.S. government. And so it tells a really cool story. It's one I'm surprised I don't hear more about, because I feel like Benedict Cumberbatch has a good bit of underrated movies. And this is definitely one of the highest ones for me that I checked out fairly recently. And I'm not 100% sure if it's still streaming on Prime Video. Like I said, I don't remember if it's an original or if they just had it on there, but it's one I definitely recommend checking out. If you're a fan of Benedict Cumberbatch, it's a great performance from him. And like I said, it does a really cool job kind of blending the two worlds of the spy elements of it and their friendship along the way. So it does a good job with mixing all those elements together. It's a movie I really enjoyed, so it's one I wanted to recommend here. Next recommendation is Die Hard 4, I believe. Yes, Die Hard 4. So Die Hard, Live Free or Die Hard. Now this is one, I've been going through the Die Hard movies the past year or so for the first time, having not seen them before up until now. And I feel like Die Hard 4 is definitely pretty underrated. Obviously Die Hard is the top one of the franchise. Die Hard 2 is still pretty good. And even Die Hard 3 is really great. So I was not sure where we would go with Die Hard 4, because I'd heard Die Hard 5 was really bad. So I was curious. And I was really surprised with this one. I thought there was a good villain performance. I thought Bruce Willis did a good job as the main character as well. It's a really cool kind of 4th of July movie, I guess you could say, because it revolves around the 4th of July, if I recall. It's been, again, I'm a few months removed from watching the movie. But I really enjoyed it. I thought there was a really cool story. They took the character in a kind of refreshing direction. They didn't recycle the same kind of story from the previous films. So like I said, you get a good performance from Bruce Willis, a good villain and kind of motivation for all of the things they want to do, some really cool action along the way, and it kind of took the Die Hard franchise into, at least the time of the movie, a bit more of a modern setting of kind of revolving around technology and espionage through that kind of thing. So it was really cool to see. So if you've not given all the Die Hard movies a chance besides the first one, it's definitely worth checking out the sequels, at least up until the 4th one, because they're all pretty great. So I could have put any of the sequels for Die Hard on this one probably, but the first 3 are pretty well regarded from what I've heard, and I don't always hear a ton about Die Hard, Live Free or Die Hard, so wanted to recommend that one here as well. And then finally for this list, this is a movie I always kind of campaign for, and I first watched it on Netflix years ago, so I highly doubt it's still streaming on there, but that is Tomorrow When the War Began. Now this is kind of similar to the Red Dawn in some aspects to the story and kind of the setup and synopsis, but it takes place in Australia, and it tells a cool story of a group of kids who are getting ready to graduate from high school. They want to do kind of like one last hurrah of their childhood before they become adults. And so they go camping for the weekend out in the woods with no cell phones, like any of that kind of stuff. And while they're there, their country is invaded and their town is now under the control of the country that invades it. And it's up to them to use kind of, like Red Dawn, like guerrilla warfare tactics to kind of take back their town. And I've always enjoyed this one since checking it out for the first time. It's one that I wish had gotten sequels for, because it's based off of a book series from, I think, the 90s. And I know they did this first movie. It never got a sequel. I think they did a series for it years later, but it only got one season. So it's one I wish we could have gotten more of, because the ending of the movie really sets up an interesting direction they could have taken. So I guess the only way to know what happens next would be to read the books, but it's nonetheless a really good movie. There's some really great action along the way, some interesting themes to do with warfare and the effects it has on teenagers and children and young minds and stuff. So really cool, really interesting. I love the action of the movie, as well as just getting to see it all done by teenagers. Of course, growing up, that would have been fun for me. So that concludes my 5 recommendations for this entry in the series of underrated underrated and underappreciated movies. So I hope you enjoyed it. Again, this is kind of an ongoing series, so I'm already working on the next part for movies that I'd like to recommend for you guys to check out that I think are underrated and underappreciated. So be sure to share some of your favorite underrated movies in the comments down below. If you want to know some other ones from me, I have a playlist on the channel that goes through, I think this is the 4th entry now in this series, so I have at least 15 other recommendations that I think are underrated that you can check out. So be sure to check those videos out. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this one. I'll see you in the next video.